Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Dave Emmons Show. And we're going to be with you for an hour, maybe 2 hours on this one, but we'll probably divide this time up because I guess people get a little tired of watching things for over 30 minutes usually. But we're going to have to do a whole hour to get this in the first hour. A little bit of technical difficulty. Zoom. Has anybody else experienced problems with Zoom? I mean, I've had my share of problems with Zoom. Okay, Dave Emmons Show. We're going to be syndicated, and also, there's a radio station WLDY in Maryland, Eddie Carson's Odyssey Radio Live, and they're going to do the audio portion, and I will be sending out the video portions to everybody on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and several others platforms that I can get on. So we'll just go from there. We won't say too much more. But my guest this evening, and I've been looking for an expert that's into the cryptids and that type of thing, and I got one, and his name's Christian McCloud. He's a director and lead investigator of the ACAPS, has over 25 years experience investigating cryptid and paranormal activities with a passion for studying and preserving the Native American tribe culture, folklore, and legends. He also knows about dealing with topics such as the occult, UFOs, forbidden archaeology, the Freemasons, the Knights Templars, secret societies, and many other governmental cover-up people, I guess, whatever private organizations, dot, dot, dot. Christian holds a bachelor's level degree in psychology and minor in criminology from the University of South Florida. He lived in Florida for some time, and beautiful down there. I know, I love it down there. And he has an advanced master's of arts and teaching degree from Western Carolina University. Christian is currently finishing a second master's, and he's also a teacher. He does that. He teaches history, American history, and he's from Western Carolina University. He's got that degree from there, and he's going to continue with a PhD program, and that makes him just about a professional student. I told him earlier. The American Cryptid and Paranormal Society (LLC) has worked in conjunction with Joshua P. Warren for many years, and he can tell us a little bit about that. Along with Joshua P. Warren, the ACAPS has been working closely with Daniel Tiny Hurst, founder and lead researcher of the Hurst Paranormal and Cryptid Society. And let's see here. The American Cryptid and Paranormal Society LLC has gained acclamation and been featured on many publications, including Asheville Citizen Times, News 40, The Mountain Express, The Daily Planet, the McDowell Times, and New York Times, as well as being featured on various radio programs such as Coast to Coast a couple of different times. He knows George Norrie very well. Joshua P. Warren's Speaking of Strange podcast, and then Vic Kundis, Dogman Encounters Radio, Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, and many other media outlets. Christian McCloud is also a host of his own very popular award-winning podcast, Cryptids and a Paranormal Society podcast. And Christian McCloud from Asheville, Carolina. What do you say? You have anything to add to that, buddy?
No, sir. As I said before, on paper it sounds real impressive. I just hope I live up to the hype.
Yeah. Well, it feels like deja vu, don't it, buddy? We've
A
been
little bit.
yeah, we've had some technical problems. It's just okay. I'm not going to say anything. I think it'll hit us again. Uh, let how did you get involved in this, and what was your first incident that really got you? I guess we all get triggered with these types of obsessions with certain things, like me with ETs, and you with cryptids. How did you get started, Christian?
Well, when I look back, my childhood was a little strange. I grew up in a house with a foundation, I believe was from 1620. I'm from Maine originally, and the house was just incredibly old. And I'm a firm believer it was haunted. And I would see strange things happen. Things would disappear. They'd show up in the barn, or they'd show up in the attic, or they just vanish completely, and they'd show back up where they originally were. And then I remember coming home one time, I must third or fourth grade, and I had a stuffed elephant, and I came home and it was floating. It was just floating in midair. And I always thought that kind of behavior was normal. I know that sounds stupid, but I mean, I thought it was normal simply because all my friends, they basically had the same issues going on. There was, it's not too strange to drive down where I'm from and see graveyards in the front or backyards of all these older houses, and it's the family crypt, the family plot, things like that. So, I mean, I think I just grew up in a place that was, very, very haunted. It was very, very active, and for me, it was normal. And then when we moved and I went to college, that stuff didn't happen. And I remember thinking, I wonder why this doesn't happen here and used to happen there. And then that's kind of how the whole ball of wax started going for the paranormal aspect. The cryptid aspect, I'll never forget that. I was about 5 years old and I was walking with my grandfather and my cousin in the woods behind my house, again in Maine. And we were pretty far off in the woods. This is in Appalachia, in that range. And I remember looking down and seeing this massive footprint and putting my foot next to it. And even a little kid just remembering, how much bigger this footprint was than mine. And my grandfather was my grandfather's probably the coolest family member I ever had on my dad's side, simply because he was just one of these guys that had done everything, been there, done it. He was a Spitfire pilot in World War II. He'd done all this other cool stuff. He lived in Alaska for a year after World War II. And what had happened is when he looked down and saw it, he grabbed me and my cousin. He looked at me and goes, "That's the boss of the woods. We're getting out of here." And then we went back to my place, and like he pretty much carried both me and my cousin uh, at a pretty good clip. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that term, "boss of the woods." And he grabbed my father and my uncle and my other uncle and took them in a different room and started yelling. I just remember him yelling and screaming about safety of the kids and all this other stuff. And that's kind of how that started for the cryptid aspect of it. One of my biggest regrets is I never got to talk to. He died when I was about 6,
Wow.
but one of my biggest regrets is not being able to talk to him more about that, because he definitely had seen or been part of something when he was in Alaska. I think that was pretty obvious.
So the boss of the woods is that was another nickname for Bigfoot, I guess,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. It's a nickname.
Yeah, we had another little glitch there. Go.
Little glitch there.
Yeah.
But ever since then, I've just been fascinated with both topics. I'm also known as the Cryptid Guy, so a lot of people might know me as the Cryptid Guy. But that my buddy Josh, as you said, I've worked a lot with Josh with people. I would not be where I am today if there's 3 people I can pretty much thank for doing what I do openly these days. It's Joshua P. Ward, George Norrie, and Tom Danheiser. Without those 3 guys, I'd still just be doing my thing and keeping all my information to myself, and I wouldn't be talking to anyone. They're the ones that kind of convinced me to start being a little more vocal and start my own organization. And I'm always going to be grateful to those guys.
Now you were
'Cause if it weren't
telling
for
me
them,
that George Norrie is a nice guy and he helps people, and not a lot of people know that side of him. He's pretty.
Norrie is one of the coolest guys you'll ever meet. You know how you always hear, "Don't miss don't meet your heroes."
Yeah.
Norrie's the exception of that. Norrie, this is the nicest guy. He did a show in Asheville with Joshua P. Warren, and Josh is from here. And I said, "Listen, I'll go pick the guy up." I mean, I've been listening to him for years. I mean, I was just a fan to begin with. And prior to that, I had lunch with him, and I was more than happy to drive him around and take him where he needed to go. And let me tell you something: this guy's just a class act. He refused to let me pay for anything. He was like, "Wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do." He was introducing me to people like I was his pal. I mean, he's just just a class act. He's exactly what you'd hope someone like that of that status would be, and he's just one of the nicest. There's nothing I can't say about him that isn't just a compliment. He was just such a cool guy. When I was dropping him off at the airport, he even signed a couple pictures for me. Told me if I ever need anything, let him know. It's just that kind of guy. I mean, I honestly felt like he was a friend. And Tom Danheiser, I still talk to him every couple of months. Tom Danheiser is just the nicest guy in the world.
Right.
Like
So,
almost
so
brother for another
actually,
mother.
George Norrie give you a few tips, I guess, too, to help you
Oh
out
yeah, oh
in
yeah.
what you're
He
doing.
got me. He made me famous in a restaurant with a bunch of people. Had no idea who I was. You understand? Wherever George goes, there's this huge entourage, because he's that kind of guy. He's just that kind of guy. Wherever he goes, people are just going to follow him and hang out. And we were in a restaurant, and he goes, "Hey, Christian, I'm going to make you famous." I said, "What are you talking about?" And he yells at me. He goes, "Hey, McCloud, F you!" And everyone looks at me. And I start cracking up, and they're like, "Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy?" So it's just, he's just got like a great sense of humor. And honestly, he's just one of the nicest guys in the world, and he truly enjoys helping people. I think one of the reasons why he's so motivated to do such top notch work on his show is because in the back of his mind, he knows he's helping people. And that all kind of goes into the cryptid and paranormal thing we were talking about earlier about how when people see stuff, they don't know how to deal with it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think Nori has guests on that not only help people deal with things, but say, "Hey, listen, it's okay. This is normal. This has happened globally. People experience this all over the place when it comes to the paranormal or cryptid realm." So I think he probably helps a lot more people than he'll ever be given credit for.
Yeah, I just think that that when you're doing a job like he's doing, and he's kind of got that little flair like Art Bell. He's
Oh
got
yeah, he does.
relaxing tone flair, and
He's
uh,
like an uncle.
yeah,
He's like the cool uncle.
yeah. I've never been on his show, but like I said, I've been on Richard Surrett's show a couple of times, and he's a nice guy.
I'll
Uh,
tell you something else about Nori. Most people know. The guy's got a heck of a singing voice. Doesn't he? Does an Elvis you wouldn't believe. I mean, he's got a credible voice. He probably could have been a singer if he wanted to be.
yeah, yeah, he's got a good radio voice, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
let's get back on the track of this. What you first started off with your grandpa, and then
Mm-hmm.
you did you see this Bigfoot up close enough to
Nope.
describe him? No.
Nope. No. Didn't always. All I saw was the footprints.
Okay.
That was
Uh,
it. And I remember my grandfather just putting his foot was kind of next to it, and it was just like the size of my foot next to his.
yeah.
That's the size difference. I mean, it was just massive.
Wow. Yeah. Did you ever hear one, or did you ever tape or record one like you see these documentaries that they knock on wood? And I've heard somebody say that knocking on wood is not really them knocking on wood, but they're clicking their huge tongues and making a snapping noise with their tongues.
Actually, I've actually heard people say it's their palms hitting the wood, palms hitting the trees.
Really?
They're that strong. I can honestly say this. I never saw one up there. We did find footprints every once in a while. Stuff would go missing. The trash would be. I can remember finding the trash can 500-600 yards into the woods when I
Right.
was a kid. But I will say this: I do remember hearing wood knocks, and I remember hearing, that old that howl that's from like the I don't know if it's the Sierra sounds, the old.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
remember hearing that when I was a little kid, and my dad telling me that was just wolves. But I remember that. But like I said, we never saw anything. But I'm sure where we were in New England. I mean the Appalachian Trail is right there.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. There's a lot of things going on up to those Appalachian Mountains. Uh,
yeah,
Now, when you guys are going out investigating, you go with a crew of about what, 3 or 4 people. You have cameras,
we've
and
got we've got cameras. We've all got permits, so we all carry firearms. We've all got gear, safety gear. We've got equipment, so if we got lost or something, we've got tents, thermal blankets, things like that. I'm also a ham radio operator, so I've got a portable ham radio with me
mhm.
at all times. And
That's good. You're taking the safety way
yeah,
through this whole thing. But I've seen people on documentaries where they don't have weapons, they don't have radios, they don't
I
even
think
have
they're
phones.
foolish.
Yes, I think they are too. Yes.
They're
Uh,
going even if you don't find anything, you're still out in the woods. You're out in where there's no modern technologies. There's no phones there. You're out there far enough. If you have an accident, if you fall, you slip, you've still got to get back to where you started. And if you don't
right.
have any modern, if you don't have any modern conveniences to help you, you're just asking for problems.
Yes.
It's
It's
ridiculous.
Yeah. You have to be prepared when you go. And like an ex-military guy like me, everything that you said, I would definitely have. And of course, unpermitted too. Uh, and so I would, it's been a long history of me from after the military. They always teach you be prepared. Have your water, have your canteens,
Hmm.
have your pills, your malaria pills, and your ammo and your weapons and all this other stuff ready to go. And that's what they teach you. And if I went in the woods with an entourage of people, uh, I would have them be prepared also. But Now, when you're on these investigations, let's start off by the scariest thing you've ever been into, Christian. Have you ever seen something, or your whole group have seen something that really scared the pants off of you?
We our one investigation, the one time we went out unarmed, we ran into a dog man, and we also it might have been another dog man or it was a Bigfoot, but we were in Western North Carolina. I don't want to give exact locations simply because I don't want anyone going there and getting hurt. Safety, Dave, for me, safety's always been the number one issue. I've
Right.
always done it's always been my number one issue. That's why we carry the way, that's why we do the way we do, pardon me, do the things we do. We do more research on an area before we go in than most people would probably do in their entire investigation. I mean, we've got topo maps, we back investigate, we see how far back we can go, see who was the original landowners. We go back, we do a pretty thorough job before we even step foot anywhere. There's one particular time we were training we weren't training. Let me say this, because this specific person was just unbelievable in the woods. They had gone through safety and all. They were incredible in the woods. In fact, they were definitely a woods person. They were very, very acclimated, and they had never been on a cryptid investigation. So when we went to this one particular place that we had some good luck with before, about 6 months prior, uh, they were doing a mountain cleanup where we were parking. They were just doing like an area cleanup.
Hmm.
So we parked the cars and we got together. I'm like, look, I don't want to freak anyone out, even though it's legal to carry guns right here and we all have permits, but I just don't want, I mean, there's kids there, you know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't want a bunch of kids doing a cleanup to see us walking in the woods with guns, thinking we're going to blast Bambi. I mean, that was, I wasn't worried about us. I just didn't want the kids to see it. So that's what we did. And we went in, and about I don't know, maybe a mile and a half in, we started finding tracks. Now, all of this is on the website. If you look at cryptidguy.com or American Cryptid and Paranormal Society.com, and you look at the evidence, you'll see all the pictures of everything I'm about to tell you. We found footprints that were 21 by 11 and a half, that were smashed like into leaf litter. I mean, they were just crushed into there. So that had to have been at least 1,800 pounds. Um, we had found handholds in the side of what I would call these little hills that
Right.
both my hands could fit in. I mean, like I said, this is all documented in pictures. And we just kept finding more and more evidence, and we were following it. At one point, we found a kill site for where deer had been obviously hunted and killed, because we found deer hair and there was blood. Uh, as we looked up, we noticed this hill, and up this hill, about 50 feet up from where the kill site was a blind. And we came up closer to that. And as I'm looking at it, I'm realizing that this blind has been made by someone taking tree limbs and basically weaving them together. And
Wow.
this blind was massive. And it was not only made from older tree material, but newer tree material. So someone had been very actively doing this. Well, Tiny and I start walking up this hill, and Dave, we got hit with this grunt that, not to make the listeners sound, be grossed out, but I had had a chest cold about 2 weeks prior to that, and I was still fighting it a little bit. When this thing grunted, it actually loosened up phlegm in my chest. That's how hard I got hit with that grunt.
Yeah.
It,
They
it
say
was like,
this is a ultrasound or some kind of a
well, I don't know if it was infrasound because we heard it.
ultrasound. Yes.
Yeah. Usually you don't hear infrasound. That's when 15 to
Right.
30 kilohertz, but kilocycles. But we heard this grunt, and we both just plain stopped. Now, Tiny, as I said, is not a small guy. I mean, most people look at Tiny and they think he's a pro wrestler. I mean, he's just massive. Plus, he's gotten back. I mean, he's always been a weightlifter. I mean, I've seen Tiny pick up the top half of a 350 Chevy engine with his hand and just move it.
Mm.
Just, I mean, he's this is not a weak person.
Yeah.
He's not a small guy by any sense of means. But we got grunted at. I stopped moving, and just by instinct, I started putting my right hand down where I usually have my gun. When I'm in the woods, I usually have a 357 highway patrolman with me. It's my old, I call it the judge. It's just,
Yeah.
just something I've had forever.
Right.
And I kept putting my hands down there, and all I hear is Tiny. Tiny's got this real southern accent. He's from East Tennessee, and he goes, Christian, you ain't got no gun. And I was like, oh yeah. So and then it grunted at us again. And while it's grunting, you can see the light coming through this made up blind, and there's a shadow blocked out that was probably 8 to 9 foot tall, and I'm going to say maybe 5.5 feet wide, and it's just going from side to side. And when we saw that, I said, Tiny, just back up, man, just back up. I picked up both, I lifted up both my hands, and we started walking away very, very slowly. And you could hear the thing the whole time, just going back and forth, going, but it was just so deep. And then we left, and we took, we were following the path that we originally took out there. And then I figured, I thought we could take a shortcut. And as I look down, I see what's left of a turkey. Like all the feathers have been pulled out, and you could tell like the meat was gone, but the remains were there. And I look down, and I see what appears to be a very, 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 very large canid track. But have you ever seen, how dogs sit on their haunches?
Right.
And they've got, all right, because they've got the digigrade feet.
Right.
It looked like a dog had been sitting on its haunches. Part of it was kind of muddy. And as we're keeping going, about 60, 70 yards ahead of us, I see this massive black shadow go behind a tree real quick. And this is just right after we had been through this incident.
Let
And
me ask you a few questions, Christian, on how you feel about Bigfoot. I've seen and I've talked to other people, and they said that the Bigfoot, well, they're highly intelligent, and trail cams actually weapons. They can actually smell the steel of weapons, and they can actually smell like gunpowder. They're that strong with their senses that, I mean, many times better than we are, and they know where we're at, where we're coming from, what direction we're going. They know everything about us, and they're watching us in the woods. They're watching you guys in the woods, and they can actually disappear. Also, I heard they're dimensional. Is that a possibility?
I will never say no to anything being a possibility, but I'd be 99.9% sure that is not true. That is not the case. I think they're a flesh and blood creature. I think they're actually a North American primate. For a long time, I used to think they were descendants of Gigantopithecus,
Yeah.
and the older I get, the more I tend to lean towards the Nephilim. Maybe it's just I've religion's become more important in my life, and that makes more sense. But I just believe they're Nephilim.
The Nephilim was never described as being hairy like they are. Now they were, slightly hairy.
Yeah, but I mean, the giants are renowned, the men are renowned. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah,
That's the other thing, is we don't know.
yeah.
So I mean, is it? And remember, they corrupted all flesh of all things.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we don't know.
Right. I'm just finishing a book about that, and I got a giant section there about giants and also the Nephilim, and there's like 13 feet tall. They've been all over the world. They just like Bigfoot, I guess you could.
That's the funny thing, is there isn't, with the exception of Hawaii and smaller islands, there's a few mythoses and folklore that everyone on the planet has. Like everyone, even these small tiny islands, even the Polynesian, have a vampire and like a werewolf mythos. And almost every continent on the world has basically a Bigfoot, or a Yeren, or a Namaste, or whatever you want to call it. Yowie, Yowie, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. But there's got to be something there. I mean, you can't have that many people saying these things all over the world that never met each other. I don't think there's a conspiracy to talk about Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Dogman.
Myself, I've never seen a Bigfoot, but my cousin has, and he is about as shallow as a dry creek bed when it comes to the consciousness of these things like ETs and Bigfoot. Well, he was out chasing some cows for his cousin, and it was a woods. I guess it was only about 2 miles or 3 miles from my location, and he got out in the woods and he saw this big thing standing behind the tree, and it was a small tree. He said it wasn't very big enough to hide him, but he's looking at him, he said he had really long arms, and he looked to be about 8 or 9 feet tall. And he said he had long reddish like hair off of his arms. And he said he just stood there. He was in shock. And he said this thing kind of looked at him, and then he said he turned and ran. Well, he took off, and he come home. He was so scared he had to sit down and just rest for 2 or 3 hours because it frightened him so much. And he described it to me, and he described it just like they have on the shows, on the documentaries, and probably how you would describe him too. He described him to the T, and he doesn't believe in him. He's never seen one, but he saw this one. And that's how I believe him, because he wasn't a believer. And so when he saw this, it shocked him. And he was also shocked by ETs too at my house one time. That's another story. But he learned his lesson about being shallow about these types of things, and people not.
Well, I think that's what happens when people see these entities or creatures or entity, even in the paranormal. When someone sees a ghost for the first time, and they've been a non-believer their whole life, it messes with their psyche. And that's one of the biggest things. I know we were talking about this early, but it's hard for people to address the fact that they've seen something that's not supposed to exist.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That'll torment someone. I've talked to people that have kept stuff bottled up internally for years. And once they start talking about it, there's just more and more and more and more they start saying, and they start feeling better. But the truth of the matter is that they've been holding on to this for so long, it's unhealthy, and there's no one there to say, hey, listen, it's okay. We've all seen something strange we can't explain and blah, blah, blah. But no one does that for them. That's kind of where we come into play, because we just, like I said, we just want to help people.
Right.
We're not therapists. We're not cryptid therapists. There's a couple of podcasters that like to build themselves as cryptid therapists, and I think they do a phenomenal job, and I'm fans of their show, but I don't think they should build themselves as that.
Right. Now,
Just
when
for
you go out,
liability.
yeah, you have a lot of equipment also, like I've seen on
Right.
TV, and I had to, I watch these documentaries, and that's how I learn about Bigfoot. But also they have very little skimpy film. They, like a little black, like not a little, but a big black figure that runs in behind a tree, and it disappears in 2 or 3 leaps. It's gone, and they said it just disappears. That it's that either that fast or invisible.
I think it's that fast. And I also
Right.
think the camouflage, it has natural camouflage. Its hair blends in.
Yeah.
We did an experiment once. We took like a half of a ghillie suit and we stuck someone in the woods at 3 feet in the wood line.
We're
And
going to have
10
to take a
people.
break, Christian. We're
problem.
at the bottom of the hour. You're listening to the Dave Emmons Show, and it's syndicated through WODY Radio, and that's Eddie Carson's in Maryland, and that's Odyssey Radio.live. And my guest tonight is Christian McCloud. He's a cryptid man, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and this is the Dave Emmons Show, and we're taking the pause for the radio station because they need the breaks. But with our video, it keeps going. So if you think something's weird, that well, right now I guess Christian has a C on the screen, and I have a video on there, and we're just sitting there for about 5 seconds. It's a little crazy, but that's the only way we can edit and break this thing up into 2 parts. I don't want to get into details of that, but my guest, as we were saying earlier, is Christian McCloud. He's with the American Cryptid and Paranormal Society. And let's get back to where we left off, Christian. You remember where you left off?
Yeah, I think we were talking about how it's hard when people think these creatures just disappear and vanish. I don't think that's the case at all. I think they are so naturally well camouflaged just by looking at their coloring. I mean, if you look at you got people report them, they're black, they're brownish, they're kind of red.
Right.
But when you see these colors in nature, or when you see their tones in nature, they just blend in with everything. I think what happens is, they seem like they're disappearing, but in all actuality, they're just blending in. I'm a big believer in that. I don't think they vanish. I don't think they jump through portals. I don't think they're transdimensional. I think that's actually ridiculous. Someone told me, oh, well, they vibrate on a different frequency. And my question to them was, well, how do you know that?
Yeah, we don't really know. And it's just like ETs. I mean, we don't really know the full story of them, even though I've had a lot of incidents with them and I know all about it. I've been studying this stuff, but we don't really have the true answers until we have.
Well, someone does, Dave.
Yeah.
Someone does.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I won't have them. I mean,
Right.
someone everyone's got them, but and here's my thing with the ETs, and I'm a huge extraterrestrial guy. That's one of my passions.
Right.
It's just uh, but they're so far advanced. Their tech, the stuff they can do. I mean, I can you even imagine how far advanced they are? If you were to sit down and say, okay, here's what they can do. Here's the abilities they have. Here's what they can do with space travel. Here's where they can go. Here's how long it takes. I mean, you'd just be sitting there, huh? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
there's that, I'm sure you've heard this one before, but there's that famous guy that retired from Skunk Works. I can't remember his name, but during his party, a reporter asked him, how long it's going to take for us to be able to do this stuff. And he'd had a couple drinks and he said, picture Star Wars and Star Trek. We're 50 years behind that or 50 years in front of that, blah, blah, blah. And I always think to myself, I hope that's true because how cool would that really be is if the government really had that kind of tech.
I think they do. I think they're way ahead of us. What they tell us. I already already figured out that they've had these anti-gravity machines, flying machines, so they already have all that stuff. And why can't we use those in wars? To defend ourselves, because that would make a quick ending to any war, and stop wars actually altogether.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if we have the tech, we should be using it.
Right.
I mean,
Instead
go
of,
use it
yeah,
right now, and what's going on with Russia. I mean, let's
yeah.
go stop all that.
Well,
You
there is
know,
technology there, but we can't get into that. but
yeah, of
uh,
course not.
but it's I guess you get into cryptids. You're talking about, I guess, the lizard man.
Mhm.
You think the lizard man could be a reptilian alien?
I have always, you know what, I've given it two. I've thought about this, and I have two options. It was either a Bigfoot with a lot of moss on it because we know that happens because they do spend like the swamp ape. We have reports that they spend a lot of time in the water just because of their size and it cools them off. And when they come out, there's a lot of moss on them or algae that just sticks to them.
Right.
There's a lot of reports, especially in Florida. When I was in Central Florida, I mean, I used to get reports like that all the time. Or it was a reptilian. Uh, I don't know if there's a per se lizard man running around out there. That's again, I don't ever say anything's impossible. That is possible. But the one report we have in from South Carolina, that's probably the best advertised is where that young man was changing his tire, and
Hmm.
this thing just comes out of the woods and just comes right after him. To me, that kind of sounds like Sasquatch behavior if you're in their territory.
Yeah.
And if it was a reptilian, it, that'd be a different ball game because they're as advanced they are, we know they carry weaponry. Phil Snyder. I'm a firm believer in Phil Snyder's stories. I think he had a lot of stuff to say, and most people didn't listen to him at the time. But I think the stuff he was talking about, 25 years ago, was
Well,
very applicable.
he was mysteriously killed with a
Well, I mean,
walker.
look what happened to him when he was doing those dumbs. I mean, he was
Mhm.
basically filleted.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. So yeah, there's something to all that, and somebody
exactly.
like we were saying, somebody knows something, or somebody knows somebody that knows something.
But
so
you know what, Dave? The flip side of that is too, and I don't want to sound hypocritical, but the truth of the matter is, I also understand why the powers that be wouldn't want everyone knowing about this stuff. Because look at the mass hysteria that would cause.
mhm.
If think about that, if you say, okay, fellas, ladies, gentlemen, president's going to speak, and here's what they're going to talk about: Bigfoot's real, dogmen are real, aliens are real, and here it is. Boom. Well,
Well,
then,
which you alluded to a while ago, Christian, was
yeah,
something that's probably true, because back in the 30s they had War of the Worlds.
right,
Orson Welles, he
exactly.
this telecast, and people were jumping off the buildings because they were actually, I guess, fundamentalists. They're Christian.
Hmm.
They didn't believe in life out there. They still don't.
Right.
I mean, I've been to church, and I've been with the men's group, and I tell them, that I'm a UFO researcher, and now that I've written a book, I'm probably going to be banned from going to church, because this is how they think, and if they have never seen it or believed it before, and like you said earlier, if they see something for the first time, they just go crazy. They go berserk. So they're, you know, it's a shock to their own belief system.
But I don't think ultra like I mean, I was raised. I'm very lucky in the fact I was raised basically with two religions growing up, Episcopal and Catholic,
Right.
and I'm a firm believer that both today both churches would still be very accepting of your viewpoints. I don't think you'd have a problem. That's just me.
Yeah,
That's
I
just
well,
that's
I
just
know,
my
I
take
know,
on it.
yeah, I know a lot of people that go to church, so they don't believe that if they, and if I, as being a researcher, I mean, that was when this was before I wrote the book, and it was released back in March. But now since I got a book released, a lot of people are going to look at that and say, wow, this guy's crazy. He believes in ETs and UFOs. So that, and that, I guess a few of the church guys actually showed that part of them. They just turned their backs on me and walked away. So it is some people I guess will believe it, some won't. I hung out with some preachers, and one of them told me the best answer I ever got was that he said if God wanted you to see a UFO, he said he allowed you to see one. And I thought, wow, that's a good answer. It's a good, just don't
I
call me,
agree.
yeah, don't call me crazy.
No, but you know what, Dave? If someone's pretending to be your friend and you write a book about things you've experienced and things that you have personally seen, and then they come turn around and call you crazy, how much better are they than the people that were at the Salem witch trials? There's the same mentality, hundreds of years later. So I mean, you don't need them. Those aren't friends.
Right.
Those aren't people you need in your life.
Right. I've never
You're
seen
better
a,
than that.
yeah, I've never seen a Bigfoot, Christian, but
Yeah.
I believe in them because there's been too many people have seen them, and just like you've had some incidents with them. So there's too many people, too many witnesses, and in a court of law, these cases would win hands down. Actually,
Oh, definitely,
yeah.
definitely. Oh, come on. It's ridiculous to even. But see, that's where the hypocrisy is, and
Hmm.
that's also where Big Brother comes into play
Right.
because you can see all this, but then all of a sudden that becomes a bear report. There
Hmm.
was a bear. How many times have you heard that story?
Right.
We saw this, 9-foot creature, blah blah blah, and no, you saw a bear. I've actually spoken to people point blank that said by the time they were done with their report, they were pretty sure they saw a bear, but they were pretty sure it wasn't a bear, but the bear won.
Well, yeah.
Uh,
There's been some documentaries that said that forest rangers actually come out to investigate, and they
mhm.
told these people who saw this Bigfoot, they said, "You didn't see a Bigfoot, you saw a bear, right?" And they said, "No, we saw a Bigfoot." Okay, I'm not going to leave until you say that you saw a bear, and that's it. End of story. So
And then they'll have them sign off on the paperwork. Yeah.
yeah, so somebody's pushing that agenda of trying to stop this flow of information. But we get into the cryptids and the lizard man. You say you found that. Now you lived in Florida for a while.
Hmm.
I guess the skunk ape and the lizard man was popular down there.
Skunk ape more so than anything. A lot of dogman reports in the last 10 years down there.
Yeah.
A lot of dogman has become a huge cryptid these days, and I don't know if there's been a population boom, or I don't know if people just seen them more, but there's a lot of dogman sightings down there.
Could
But
you
the
tell?
skunk ape is
Yeah.
still, the Mayaca skunk ape is still the number one cryptid seen down there.
Okay. Could you tell us what a dog man is, what it looks like, and how big is it?
Well, now in the research I've done, some people classify them differently. I have my own classification system. I call them alpha, betas, and charlies. And it's a real simple thing. Alphas are the big ones. They tend to be 9 to 12 foot tall, probably 2,000, 2,500 pounds. And they look like what you would think a werewolf would look like. They're just massive. They're hulky. They've got the hawks. They walk digigrade, and they've got the claws and the fangs. Their eyes will either be amber or blue when they're reflected by light, and they're just massive. However, they're highly intelligent. Um, Dark Waters, I've always been a fan of his. I always like listening to him. I always like the stories he told. But I also agreed with what he said about them being the crypto terrorists. They seem to enjoy to like scaring people. Those are the ones that'll tap on the window and look at you, or they'll point, and they seem to like smirk, but they're just massive. The beta types are the same version of that. They're just about a foot and a half, 2 foot shorter, and they pretty much look the same. And then what I call the Charlies tend to look like a walking wolf, like with the long tail and everything. So that's how I classify them. but they are, they are not characteristically described as being anything but that creature. They're considered a cross between, a Sasquatch, a human, and a wolf. They've also been called bear man, things of that nature. They have that snout. Some of them have longer snouts. Most reports I've always, all the reports I will say this, all the reports I've ever personally taken, and from what I've seen, they all have those very, very large pointed ears. They almost look like Anubis.
Really? Oh,
But they'll have the German Shepherd type face, but they'll have those bigger, elongated ears.
it's like the
Yeah,
Egyptian
exactly.
mythology drawings out.
Anubis, right? Yeah,
Now, there's been a lot of people disappear in the forest, and especially up in Alaska. We lived up
right.
there for 2 years. I never saw bear. Saw a lot of moose and elk and things of that nature, but never saw bear. And certainly, we didn't see a Bigfoot. But a lot of people go missing in Alaska and also
Hmm.
across the world. Actually, do you think some of these cryptids, like this dog man and Bigfoot, are killing these people?
Oh, definitely. Not a doubt in my mind. David Paulides, I love David Paulides' books, Missing 411. I've got them all.
Mm-hmm.
And he's now I watch his channel too, and I think he's finally coming out now. He's doing classes on Bigfoot, Bigfoot 101. And I think he's finally coming out and saying, well, yeah, these things probably snatch someone every once in a while. And that's where people disappear. I don't know if he's coming out blatantly and saying that yet, but I think that's what he's alluding to. But I think you don't have, logically speaking, that's got to be part of it. Uh, and the Parks Department, I think that's one of the reasons why they don't come out with the truth, is because now they got to worry about stuff that happened 40, 50 years ago. Someone got snatched and eaten, or someone got snatched and killed, or something happened. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the Smoky Mountains. A lot of these stories, and they all end pretty badly. And some of them, you just look at even if you just look at the facts, and the way the kids disappeared, the way the people disappeared, and how they're never found. There's no traces. Like the Dennis Martin case. I look at that one. I mean, they had witnesses. It looked like, they said that looked like a massive bear running on two legs, had a kid on his shoulder running with him, and it's
But
just things like that. I tend to
yeah,
believe that's what happens.
I've heard a story. Teddy Roosevelt back at the turn of the
Yeah,
century.
the Bauman incident. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Edison and Ford was with him, and they went out camping out. They were going hunting, and at night they had their little tents and everything. They heard this big roar and this big rumble, like you're saying, this infrasound that goes on with these things. And they heard that, and they thought, "Oh my goodness, that's a huge animal." And these three, they had their high caliber rifles, but they just stayed there quietly. And I think the next morning they moved out. They were afraid. So that was one of the incidents that there was, from big name people.
Well, yeah, but remember, Roosevelt wrote about the Bauman incident and the Wilderness Hunter. He wrote about that's in his book,
Yeah,
1896.
yeah,
And remember, he's the one that also comes up with the national park system. So if you look at the way the national park system is set up, in my opinion, that's the migration patterns of these creatures.
right.
That's the way they migrate. So everywhere there's a migration pattern, there's a national park. So I mean,
Well,
I
actually,
yeah,
national parks just here lately, the last few
yeah,
years, actually authorize people to have weapons when they go
right,
in the federal national parks, I guess,
right.
the big ones. I don't know about the state parks or the smaller
Some
ones.
of the states, now you have to actually call, like where I live in North Carolina. Some state parks, well, I'm not even sure anymore. Before we do anything, we always make a phone call wherever we go, just
Right.
because we don't want any problems with the authorities.
Yes. And yeah, you don't want any weapons problems. That's the thing that
Right.
I'm always guarded about myself. I follow the law to the T. Uh,
You have to.
yeah, you
You
have
have
to.
to.
If you don't,
I've actually called rangers and say, hey, listen, we're cryptid explorer or cryptid, researchers. We're going to be here. I would give them the make and model of the car with my license plate, and we've actually come back, and there'll be a thank you note from the ranger
oh,
for letting us know we were out there. I mean, so I think some of these rangers are they're 100% on your side. They want,
yeah, they want
they,
to find out too. They
they
probably have
want to find
seen
it too.
things. Yeah, they probably seen things. Now, I guess we get to the lizard man and the I guess the wolf man. Is the wolf man different
Well, the
than the dog
Wolfman,
man?
in folklore mythos, the Wolfman transmogrifies from a human being into a werewolf. Now, that is not the case with Dogman. Dogman is Dogman when he wakes up in the morning, when he goes to bed at night, when he kisses Mrs. Dogman goodnight. He's always a Dogman. Transmogrification, that's a supernatural event. That's a gift from, Satan. That's the ability, well, a gift or curse, whatever you want to look at it. But it's also transmuted from either a bite or maybe a pelt or something like that throughout the historiography. But it's a different animal altogether. That is a supernatural being, whereas Dogman, the Cynocephali, which goes back all the way to historic record. Alexander the Great actually had Cynocephali mercenaries in his army, and he talks about that. There's depictions of Cynocephali having kingdoms off the coast of India. St. Christopher, original depiction was a dog-headed man. He was a Cynocephali. That's why he's depicted carrying someone over a river, because he was 10 foot tall and basically was, Cynocephali, and he was strong enough to do all that. So throughout the historic record, we have many, many, many thousands of depictions of Cynocephali. So those are just creatures that I think they're just natural creatures, much like Sasquatch. But like a werewolf or wolfman, something like that, that's a case of transmogrification, where a human being comes from one state, his metabolism, his metabolic structure and everything just changes, and he becomes an animal.
Okay,
So
now
that's
where
different.
do you think all these things originate from? What is it? There's something like, have they been on Earth for thousands of years and they just evolve or whatever?
I think so. I think what happened is, I think they're part of the historic record. I think, I Bigfoot for me is easy to explain. It's hard for me to explain Cynocephali. But here's the deal. People have to keep something in mind. When 1776 is happening in America, and we're fighting the British for our freedom, people seem to forget that smallpox is still a massive problem throughout the entire North American continent, including South America and Canada. Now, what most people don't realize, there's a book called Pax Americana, by, I think, oh God, Finn. I
Yeah, I
can't
want
think
to
of
I
his
want to
first
let
name.
people know that Christian is a history teacher, so he knows all this stuff.
By Elizabeth Finn wrote a book called Pax Americana, and what it does, it talks about the smallpox epidemic that's still going on while we're fighting the Revolutionary War. But what most people don't realize is that smallpox will go from a human to a great ape. So if Bigfoot has great ape DNA in him, guess what he's susceptible to?
Yeah.
And there are stories about the Canadian natives uh, catching smallpox, and the Sasquatch coming out of the woods with the same issues and them dying together. I mean, that's part of Native American folklore. So I think what happened is, not only did the smallpox ravage the Native American communities, it also ravaged the cryptid communities. And I think what happened is just, we're not encroaching more. They're just, numbers are coming back to where they were originally.
Right. What
Because
about
if you look at the Native American folklore prior to that, they talk about Cynocephali, I mean, there's so many different names for them. And they talk about Dogman, and they talk about Bigfoot, and how they don't get along, and how one's a guardian and one's not. But it seems to crisscross throughout different cultures. So it predates, European invasion
so
quite significantly.
you don't think they come in and out of our realities?
Oh God, no. I'm not. For me to believe that, I'd have to see that. That's just one of those things. After seeing what I've seen, there's no doubt in my mind that they're corporeal beings, that they live, they breathe, they eat, they have little babies, they hide. They're just very good at what they do. Very good at what they do. And they've learned to be very good at what they do. Think about it. If you were, let's just say, Dave, let's just say you're a 12-foot, 2,800-pound North American primate covered in hair. You're designed to live in the forest. You've got night vision. Your hearing's impeccable. Your smell's incredible. All right. And you see these little pink, hairy apes, hairless apes running around. And all they do is break stuff, destroy stuff. They can't get along. They shoot everything. What are you going to do with that high intelligence? You're going to avoid them as much as you can, aren't you?
Right. Yeah.
And that's what they've learned to do over the centuries. They just avoid us.
Well,
You know?
actually, there's some stories in history. We're talking about shapeshifters throughout
Right.
history.
Well,
And
that's
actually,
skinwalkers.
yeah, skinwalkers out west, and the Native American Indians actually had battles with these giants I
right.
guess they could have been Nephilim, like you're saying.
Well,
And
you had
oh,
the cave system where they found all the all the,
yeah,
where they allegedly smoked them all out, and but that goes. There's Native American folklore about having giants or Sasquatch actually unite with Native American cultures to defeat the red-headed giants.
yeah.
So I mean, you have that, but the bottom line is, Dave, the truth is we just don't know.
Well, yeah, we don't.
Yeah,
And
I mean, we've only been in this area 300 years. We basically, let's be honest, America's been around basically about 300 years, just give or take, in some film a minute. All right.
right,
But what about all the hundreds of thousands of years prior to that? I mean, we're still finding mounds and archaeological artifacts that people won't even talk about, by the way. That I mean, let's for instance, in Georgia, there's allegedly Mayan ruins, and in Tennessee, there's alleged Mayan ruins. You don't hear about that. Or
mhm,
the Egyptian artifacts that are found in Ohio, or the Egyptian artifacts that are found out in California.
right,
And that's just the stuff that I mean, we still don't know how all that copper got mined out of Canada, and then the same copper ends up in Greece used during the Bronze Age. We don't even know how all that happens.
now,
I mean, we're
Christian,
we're still trying to. Yeah.
you could declare the Nephilim? Would you say that they're cryptids? Would they be cryptids
Oh,
nowadays?
I would. Yeah, definitely. Anything like that's a cryptid in my book. My aliens are cryptids
Right,
until they're identified. That's the only thing. Like I said, the only thing that would not be a cryptid, and this is just my book. This is just American Cryptid and Paranormal Society. This is just how we do it. Anything that has to do with the divine or the undivine. An archangel, that's not a cryptid. That's an archangel.
right,
A vampire, that's a vampire. That's got powers from demonic forces. That's a vampire. Werewolf, demonic forces, same thing. Demons, same. See, that's how we do that.
are these
But what?
all these creatures, Christian? Are they nocturnal, night dwellers,
No,
whatever?
absolutely not. No, I think it's ridiculous to assume that. Does your dog just sit down all day and do nothing? I mean, do primates just sit down and do nothing all day and wait for the night? No, I think they're opportunistic. I think sometimes I think it depends on. I think it's situational. I think if they can sleep during the day, they can, and if they have to be out at night, they will. If they can sleep during the night and be up during the day, they can. I just think it depends on where they are, and how close to humanity they are.
Right. Now,
Because if you're on the fringes, you want to be sleeping during the day because it's safer for you at night. Because one, you can see, you've got all your other senses that are just they're so much better than ours. So, you'd probably want to be out. But if you're just say you're in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, why would you be up at night when you can just be up during the day?
right. Christian, I want to ask you this. You've been on investigations, you've talked to a lot of people. Have you known of anybody, or have you ever seen bodies of dead people that were killed by cryptids?
No, I've never seen it. I've heard things, but something like that, you're never going to see that unless you walk into something. And we've never, thank God, walked into anything like that. No, I've talked to people that have seen campsites that have just been destroyed,
Right.
and like all the equipment was left there.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
was getting at. Yeah, that's what I was
yeah, but I have never. Now I have walked in. We have found stuff in the woods that's actually a little strange. And one of the explanations I got even creeped me out more. We found clothes hanging up in Walmart bags, just like cheap clothes, just like a
wow.
pair of flip flops, sweatpants, and a t-shirt. And the explanation we were told by someone was, and this is going to sound crazy, but again, that's kind of what we do. Was that's because there was a tribe of transmogrification of werewolves. A tribe of werewolves actually transmogrified, and when they went back to their human form, they needed something to wear. So they just usually buy a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt and something from Walmart real quick, so they have something to wear when they're coming out of the woods.
Wow.
That was the explanation we were given by someone who said he'd seen it happen.
Mhm.
So, we've seen that, but we've also found equipment that looks like it's been out in the woods for years. Just stuff that you'd just strange things. You never know what you're going to come on out there, find out there.
Right. Yeah, it's there's I guess people that live around the woods or forest, they hear these noises. They even have I've seen these stories, these documentaries of Bigfoot and also the dog man approaching their houses and actually trying to bust down the door. And I think they're just trying to scare them mostly. It seemed like to me, Christian. Is that what their intent is?
If
Run
they
down their
wanted to come in
territory.
that, if they wanted in on that house, they'd be in.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to stop a Sasquatch or full-grown dog man from coming in your house, unless it's been built by Fort Knox.
Right. We're closing up, and this time goes by so fast, Christian. We're
It does.
closing down to the bottom of the hour. We got 1 hour just about in. Could you tell us a little bit where they can contact you, where they can see those pictures again, Christian?
I would love to. You can find us at cryptidguy.com or American Cryptid and Paranormal Society.com. Our 1-800 number is 1-800-329-4851. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear any stories you have, or if you have any questions, or if you got a problem with something, more than happy to help you out. Sometimes it takes us a couple days to get through all our emails, but we do answer them back. Either myself or Tiny, we are adamant about that. And that 800 number goes right to my cell phone. So I've been more than happy to answer that 24 hours a day. Like I said, our main goal is just to help people. That's all we want to do, Dave. We just want to help people understand what's going on.
Well, it's been a wonderful hour. I've enjoyed all of it. And you're listening to the Dave Emmons Show, and that's syndicated through WODY Radio, and that's OdysseyRadio.live. That's Eddie Carson's there, and it's in Maryland. And you've been listening to Christian McCloud, is a cryptid man, an American Cryptid and Paranormal Society. And we're signing off, and we want to thank you for staying with us and listening. Good night.